5:30 a.m. You wake to the sound of engines and the endless rolling of the sea beneath your feet. The transport ship rocks steadily through the dark waters of the English Channel, and you can feel the vibration of the massive engines thrumming through the metal deck beneath your sleeping bag. Around you in the crowded hold, hundreds of other young men are stirring, some already awake and staring at the ceiling, others still lost in what might be their last peaceful dreams. Your name is James Sullivan, though everyone back home calls you Jimmy. You're 19 years old, from a small town in Ohio, where the biggest excitement was usually the county fair or a high school football game. 6 months ago, you were working at your father's hardware store, planning to maybe ask Mary Henderson to the church social. Now you're somewhere in the English Channel, part of the largest invasion force in human history, about to set foot on a beach in Nazi-occupied France. The air in the hold is thick with the smell of diesel fuel, unwashed bodies, and something else you can't quite identify until you realize it's fear. Not panic, not terror, but the quiet, steady fear that comes when you know something dangerous is about to happen, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. It settles in your stomach like a cold weight, making the ship's rolling motion feel even more unsettling. You reach into your shirt pocket and pull out the letter from home that arrived just before you shipped out from England. Your mother's careful handwriting covers both sides of the thin paper, telling you about the victory garden she's planted, about how proud your father is, about how the whole town is praying for you and all the other boys overseas. You've read it so many times you know it by memory, but holding it makes you feel connected to that other world, the one where the biggest worry was whether it would rain on the church picnic. Can't sleep either, huh? The voice belongs to Tommy Kowalski, a kid from Detroit who's been your bunkmate since basic training. He's sitting up in his sleeping bag, his usually carefully combed hair sticking up in all directions. Tommy's only 18, a year younger than you, but he has an easy confidence that makes him seem older. Back home, he worked in one of the auto plants before he enlisted, and he has a way of talking about complicated things that makes them sound simple. Just thinking, you reply, folding the letter carefully and putting it back in your pocket. Hard to believe it's finally happening. Tommy nods, running his fingers through his unruly hair. Been training for this for how long now? Feels like forever. Remember that first day at basic when Sergeant Morrison made us crawl through the mud for 3 hours straight? You smile despite your nervousness. You said you were going to write a letter to President Roosevelt complaining about the accommodations. Still might, Tommy grins. Though I guess storming Hitler's Europe is slightly more important than my comfort. Around you, more men are waking up as word spreads that it's time to start getting ready. The invasion fleet has been crossing the channel all night, and according to the ship's loudspeakers, you'll be approaching the French coast within a few hours. The pre-dawn darkness outside the portholes is absolute, but you know that somewhere out there, hundreds of other ships are making the same journey, carrying thousands of young men just like you toward a beach they've never seen, but have been training to assault for months. You begin the methodical process of checking your equipment, the same routine you've practiced countless times in training. Your M1 Garand rifle is clean and properly oiled, the ammunition clips secured in your cartridge belt. Your pack contains everything the army thinks you'll need to survive and fight on French soil. Extra socks, rations, medical supplies, waterproof matches, and a dozen other items that seemed important during training, but now feel inadequate for what lies ahead. The most important thing you carry isn't army issue. It's a small leather-bound Bible that belonged to your grandfather, who carried it through the trenches of France in the last war. Your grandmother pressed it into your hands the night before you shipped overseas, her weathered fingers closing yours around the worn cover. "He came home," she whispered, and you understood what she was really saying. As you finish your equipment check, you notice that the ship's engines have changed their rhythm. The steady thrumming that has been your constant companion for hours has become more urgent, more purposeful. Over the ship's intercom system, A voice crackles to life, tinny and distorted, but clearly audible in the sudden quiet of the hold. Attention all personnel. We are now approaching the Normandy coast. All units prepare for debarkation. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The words hang in the air like smoke, and you feel something shift in the atmosphere around you. The nervous chatter that has filled the hold for hours dies away, replaced by a focused intensity that you can almost taste. Men who were joking minutes ago are now silent, checking and rechecking their gear with mechanical precision. You realize that this is the moment everything changes, the dividing line between training and reality, between the young man who boarded this ship in England and whoever you'll be when you leave it. You think about the briefings you've attended over the past weeks, the maps and photographs and detailed explanations of what you're supposed to do once you reach French soil. Your unit, part of the 1st Infantry Division, will be landing on a stretch of beach the planners have designated Omaha. The intelligence reports suggest it's defended by a few bunkers and some barbed wire, obstacles that the preliminary bombardment should eliminate before you arrive. You're supposed to cross the beach quickly, move inland, and begin the liberation of Europe. It sounds straightforward when officers explain it in briefing rooms back in England. But lying here in the dark hold of a transport ship, listening to the engines strain against rough seas, you can't shake the feeling that reality is going to be more complicated than the neat diagrams and confident predictions of the planning staff. The ship lurches suddenly, a more violent motion than the steady rolling you've grown accustomed to, and you hear someone being sick nearby. The channel is rougher than anyone expected, and seasickness has been a constant companion for many of the men during the crossing. You've been lucky so far, but the combination of nervous tension and the ship's increasingly erratic movement is starting to affect your stomach as well. "Hey, Jimmy," Tommy says quietly, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. "You think we'll really do it? I mean, really kick the Germans out of France?" It's a question you've been asking yourself for weeks, but hearing it from Tommy makes it feel more real somehow. "I think so," you reply, and you're surprised to find that you actually believe it. I mean, look at all this. The whole Allied army, thousands of ships, all those bombers we've been hearing overhead. Hitler's got to be worried about something this big. Tommy nods thoughtfully. "My old man was in the last war, in France. He never talked about it much, but sometimes when he'd had a couple of beers, he'd tell stories about the trenches and the mud, and how they never seemed to get anywhere no matter how hard they fought. He said this time would be different, though. This time we'd actually win." You think about your own father, who was too young for the Great War, but who has followed every detail of this one on the radio and in the newspapers. He knows the names of generals and battles, can recite statistics about aircraft production and shipping tonnage. But you wonder if he truly understands what it means to be 19 years old on a ship full of scared young men, heading toward a beach where people will be trying to kill you. The ship shudders again, and this time you can hear activity on the deck above your heads. Boots running, shouted orders, the sound of heavy equipment being moved. The invasion fleet is taking its final positions, and somewhere out there in the darkness, the greatest amphibious assault in history is beginning to unfold. You close your eyes and try to picture home one more time. The hardware store where you worked, with its familiar smells of paint and motor oil, and the penny candy your father kept in a jar by the register. The main street on a Saturday evening, filled with families doing their weekly shopping and neighbors stopping to chat on the sidewalk. The church where you were baptized and confirmed, where you sat through countless Sunday sermons, daydreaming about baseball or girls or anything, except the possibility that you'd someday be heading into combat on the other side of the world. It all seems impossibly far away now, like something from a movie you saw once, rather than your actual life. But it's still there, waiting for you, and that knowledge gives you strength. You're not just fighting for abstract concepts like freedom and democracy. You're fighting for the right to go home, to see your parents again, to maybe ask Mary Henderson to that church social after all. The intercom crackles to life again, and this time the voice belongs to your company commander, Captain Morrison. He's a career soldier, older than most of the men under his command, and his calm professionalism has been a steadying influence during the long months of training. "Men of Charlie Company," his voice echoes through the hold. "In a few hours, you'll be setting foot on French soil as liberators. You've trained hard for this moment, and you're ready. Remember your objectives, look out for your buddies, and trust in your training. We're going to show the Germans what American soldiers can do. Good luck, and God bless." The speech is brief and matter-of-fact, exactly what you've come to expect from Captain Morrison. But there's something in his voice, a slight tightness, that suggests even experienced officers are feeling the weight of what's about to happen. It's oddly comforting to know that you're not the only one who's nervous. You hear the ship's engines change again, slowing now as the fleet takes its final positions off the French coast. Through the portholes, you can see the first faint hint of dawn creeping across the eastern horizon, a thin line of grey that separates the Black Sea from the black sky. Soon, it will be light enough to see the coast of France, and the longest day of your life will begin in earnest. The men around you are stirring with increasing purpose now, gathering their equipment and checking their weapons one final time. The casual chatter of the early morning has been replaced by the focused quiet of professionals preparing for a difficult job. You recognize the faces around you, men you've trained with and lived with for months, and you realize that whatever happens in the next few hours, you won't be facing it alone. Sergeant Wilson, a tough old regular who's been in the army longer than you've been alive, appears at the bottom of the ladder leading to the upper decks. His weathered face is impassive, but you can see the tension in his shoulders as he addresses the assembled troops. "All right, listen up," he barks in the voice that has been directing your training for months. "Time to earn our pay, boys. We'll be moving to the landing craft in 30 minutes. Full gear, weapons ready, and remember everything we've taught you. The Navy's been pounding that beach all night, and the Air Force has been working it over pretty good too. By the time we get there, Jerry should be keeping his head down." He pauses, looking around at the faces of the young men who will soon be following him into combat. "Stick together, follow orders, and use your heads. You're good soldiers, and you're going to do fine. Now get your gear, and let's go show Hitler what we think of his Atlantic Wall." The Atlantic Wall. You've heard that phrase countless times in briefings. The Germans' supposedly impregnable line of fortifications stretching along the entire coast of occupied Europe. According to intelligence reports, it's a formidable barrier of concrete bunkers, artillery positions, and beach obstacles designed to throw any invasion back into the sea. But it's also been bombed and shelled for weeks, and the planners are confident that much of its strength has been neutralized. You hope they're right. The 30 minutes pass with surprising speed as you and your fellow soldiers gather your equipment and begin the careful process of moving from the transport ship to the smaller landing craft that will actually carry you to the beach. The sea is rougher than anyone anticipated, and the transfer is treacherous work in the pre-dawn darkness. You can hear shouted orders and the occasional splash as someone loses their footing, but the well-trained crews manage the complex operation with impressive efficiency. Your landing craft, officially designated LCVP, but known to everyone as a Higgins boat, is a flat-bottomed vessel designed to carry 36 fully equipped soldiers from ship to shore. It's cramped, uncomfortable, and about as seaworthy as a bathtub, but it's also exactly what's needed for the job at hand. You squeeze into the narrow space between Tommy and a quiet kid from Montana, whose name you've never learned, feeling the weight of your pack pressing against your back and the cold metal of your rifle against your shoulder. The Navy coxswain, a young petty officer who looks barely old enough to drive a car back home, checks his watch and nods to his crew. The landing craft's engine coughs to life, and you feel the small vessel begin to move away from the relative safety of the transport ship toward the invisible coast of France. As you pull away from the larger vessel, you get your first real sense of the scale of the invasion fleet. Everywhere you look, there are ships, battleships and cruisers, their massive guns pointed toward the shore, destroyers darting between the larger vessels like aggressive guard dogs, transport ships disgorging their human cargo into hundreds of smaller landing craft, and overhead, the steady drone of aircraft heading toward targets inland. It's the largest gathering of military force you've ever seen or imagined, and the sight of it gives you confidence despite your nervousness. Whatever the Germans have waiting on that beach, they're about to face the combined might of the American, British, and Canadian armies, supported by the most powerful navy and air force in the world. The landing craft bucks and rolls in the rough seas, and the cramped quarters quickly fill with the smell of diesel exhaust and vomit as seasickness takes its toll on men already nervous about what's ahead. You focus on breathing slowly and steadily, trying to keep your stomach under control and your mind focused on the job ahead. Through the grey morning light, you can finally see the coast of France. It's a long, low line of cliffs and beaches that looks peaceful and almost welcoming in the early dawn. But you know that appearance is deceptive. Somewhere in those cliffs and behind that beach, German soldiers are waiting with machine guns and artillery, ready to defend their positions against the greatest invasion in history. The naval bombardment that has been going on for hours reaches a crescendo as your landing craft approaches the shore. The sound is indescribable, a constant rolling thunder that seems to shake the very air around you. Shells from the big guns of the fleet scream overhead, and you can see explosions blossoming along the cliff tops as the Navy tries to neutralize the German defensive positions. 5 minutes, the coxswain shouts over the engine noise and the sound of the bombardment. 5 minutes to the beach. You check your rifle one more time, making sure a round is chambered and the safety is off. Around you, your fellow soldiers are making their own final preparations, adjusting equipment and checking weapons with the mechanical precision of well-trained troops. But you can see the tension in their faces, the tight-lipped concentration that comes when abstract training is about to become very real combat. The landing craft's engine changes pitch as the coxswain adjusts course, aiming for a specific section of beach that looks identical to you, but that presumably corresponds to some marking on his nautical charts. The vessel is moving faster now, riding the waves toward shore with increasing urgency. Through the spray and the morning mist, you can see other landing craft making their own approaches, a coordinated assault that represents months of planning and preparation. "Remember," Sergeant Wilson shouts over the noise, "follow the plan, but don't be afraid to improvise if things go wrong. Keep your heads down, watch out for your buddies, and keep moving forward. The Germans are going to try to pin us down on the beach, but we're not going to let them do it." The beach is getting closer now, close enough that you can see individual features. The sand looks normal, almost inviting, but you can also see the dark lines of obstacles that the Germans have placed to prevent landing craft from reaching shore. Steel barriers and wooden stakes, some of them topped with mines, create a deadly maze that the coxswain must navigate with skill and luck. You think about the maps you studied during training, the detailed intelligence reports that described every known German position and defensive measure. But you also remember the warnings from veteran officers who had fought in North Africa and Italy, men who understood that no plan survives contact with the enemy intact. Whatever you encounter on that beach, it's likely to be different from what the planners expected. 30 seconds, the coxswain calls out, and you can feel the landing craft's bottom scraping against the sand as it approaches the shore. Get ready. This is it. In a few moments, the front ramp of the landing craft will drop, and you'll be running across an open beach toward an enemy who has had 4 years to prepare for your arrival. All the training in the world can't fully prepare you for this moment. The transition from safety to danger, from preparation to action. You close your eyes briefly and think of the letter in your pocket, of your parents back home, of the life you're fighting to preserve and return to. Then you grip your rifle tighter and prepare to become part of history. The landing craft's engine roars in reverse as the coxswain tries to get as close to shore as possible without grounding his vessel permanently. You can feel the bottom grinding against sand and rocks, and the motion of the craft changes from the rolling of deep water to the shorter, choppier movement of the surf zone. "This is it, boys," Sergeant Wilson shouts. "Remember your training and keep moving. Let's go." The front ramp drops with a metallic clang, and suddenly you can see the beach clearly for the first time. It's wider than you expected, a stretch of grey sand backed by low dunes and the dark line of the seawall. And it's not empty. You can see flashes of light from the German positions, muzzle flashes that tell you the enemy is very much alive and ready to fight despite the naval bombardment. Tracer rounds streak across the water, and you can hear the distinctive crack of rifle fire and the deeper chatter of machine guns. "Go! Go! Go!" Wilson is shouting, and the men in front of you begin to move toward the ramp. The water beyond the landing craft is deeper than anyone expected, chest deep and shockingly cold, and you see the first soldiers disappear beneath the surface as they step off the ramp with their heavy equipment. Your turn comes, and you take a deep breath before stepping into the water. The cold hits you like a physical blow, and the weight of your pack immediately tries to drag you down. The bottom is uneven, full of holes and obstacles that make walking treacherous, and the current from the waves keeps trying to knock you off balance. But you keep moving, following the man in front of you toward the beach that suddenly seems impossibly far away. The water is full of soldiers now, a long line of men struggling through the surf toward shore, their weapons held high to keep them dry. Some are helping wounded comrades, others are trying to salvage equipment that has been lost in the water. The German fire is getting more intense as you get closer to shore, and you can see geysers of sand erupting where artillery shells are landing on the beach. The machine guns are methodical and deadly, sweeping back and forth across the water and the sand with mechanical precision. Men are falling, disappearing beneath the waves or collapsing on the beach, but others keep moving forward. You reach the water's edge and throw yourself down on the sand, your heart pounding and your lungs burning from the cold water and the adrenaline. The beach is chaos, filled with soldiers seeking cover behind the metal obstacles that the Germans placed to stop landing craft. Some men are wounded, others are helping them, and everyone is trying to figure out what to do next. The plan you memorized so carefully during training seems irrelevant now. The beach looks nothing like the neat diagrams you studied, and the German resistance is stronger than anyone predicted. But Sergeant Wilson's voice cuts through the noise, shouting orders and rallying his men. "Move! Keep moving! We can't stay here!" You struggle to your feet and begin running across the sand, following the other soldiers toward whatever cover you can find. The seawall that marks the back of the beach is only 100 yards away, but it might as well be 100 miles. Every step feels like it takes forever, and you expect to feel the impact of a German bullet at any moment. But somehow, you make it to the base of the seawall, throwing yourself down behind the concrete barrier that provides the first real cover you've found since leaving the landing craft. Around you, other soldiers are doing the same thing, gasping for breath and checking themselves for wounds they might not have noticed in the confusion. Tommy appears beside you, his face streaked with sand and seawater, but his eyes bright with the fierce joy of survival. "Made it," he gasps. "We actually made it." You nod, not trusting yourself to speak yet. Your legs are shaking from a combination of cold, fear, and exhaustion, and you can taste blood in your mouth from where you bit your tongue during the run across the beach. But you're alive, and for the moment, that's enough. The seawall provides protection from the German machine guns, but you know you can't stay here indefinitely. According to the plan, you're supposed to move inland and begin the advance toward your objectives in the French countryside. But first, someone needs to deal with the German positions that are keeping the beach under constant fire. Wilson. The voice belongs to Lieutenant Hayes, a young officer who graduated from West Point less than a year ago. Despite his inexperience, he's proven to be a capable leader during training, and his calm demeanor under fire is impressive. We need to get those machine guns. Take a squad and see if you can work around to the left flank. Sergeant Wilson nods and begins selecting men for the assault. To your surprise, he points at you and Tommy. You two, with me. We're going to show Jerry what American soldiers can do. The next few minutes are a blur of careful movement and sudden violence. Working with a small group of soldiers, you manage to work your way around the left side of the German position, using the terrain and the smoke from the naval bombardment to conceal your movement. The Germans are focused on the beach, where more landing craft are arriving with additional waves of troops, and they don't notice your flanking movement until it's too late. The assault itself is over quickly. A few hand grenades thrown into the machine gun nest, followed by a rush with fixed bayonets, and suddenly the position that had been causing so much trouble is silent. The German soldiers, mostly young men not much older than yourself, are either dead, wounded, or surrendering. You look down at one of the German soldiers, a boy who can't be more than 17, and feel a mixture of relief and sadness that you don't quite understand. This is what you came here to do, what all the training was preparing you for, but actually doing it feels different than you expected. Good work, Sergeant Wilson says, clapping you on the shoulder. Now let's get back and help the others move off this beach. The rest of the morning passes in a series of small actions and incremental advances. With the immediate German resistance neutralized, more troops are able to get off the beach and begin the advance inland. You find yourself part of a growing stream of soldiers moving through the gaps in the German defenses, carrying out the mission you've trained for during long months in England. By noon, you're several miles inland, part of a defensive perimeter that the Allied forces have established around the beachhead. The immediate crisis is over, the invasion has succeeded, and the Allied armies have gained their first foothold on the continent of Europe. But you know this is just the beginning. Ahead lies a long campaign that will carry you across France and into Germany itself. You sit down in the shade of a Norman farmhouse, sharing your rations with Tommy and the other men of your squad. The quiet French countryside seems almost surreal after the violence of the morning, but you can still hear the distant sound of gunfire as other units continue to expand the beachhead. "Think we'll be home by Christmas?" Tommy asks, echoing a question that soldiers have been asking in every war. "Maybe," you reply, though you suspect it will take longer than that to finish the job you started this morning. But we're on our way. You pull out the letter from home and read it again, thinking about your parents and the town you left behind. They seem closer now somehow, as if crossing that beach has brought you nearer to the moment when you'll see them again. The liberation of Europe has begun, and you've played your part in one of the most important days in human history. As the afternoon sun warms the Norman countryside, you allow yourself to believe that you're going to survive this war, that you're going to make it home to tell your children and grandchildren about the day you helped liberate France. It's been the longest day of your life, but it's also been perhaps the most important. The invasion is secure, the Atlantic Wall has been breached, and the road to Berlin lies open ahead. You've done your duty as a soldier and as an American, and for the first time since leaving England, you allow yourself to think seriously about the future beyond the war. There will be other battles, other beaches, other moments when you'll have to summon courage you're not sure you possess. But you've proven to yourself today that you can do what needs to be done, that you can be the soldier your country needs you to be. As evening approaches and the beachhead consolidates, you think about writing a letter home. Your parents will want to know that you're safe, that the invasion was successful, that their son played a small but important part in the great crusade for freedom. But most of all, they'll want to know that you're still the same young man who left their small Ohio town, that war hasn't changed the essential things about who you are. The letter can wait until tomorrow, though. For now, it's enough to sit in the French countryside with your friends, to eat army rations that taste better than any meal you can remember, and to know that you've survived the most important day of your life. You've stormed the beaches of Normandy, you've faced the enemy and prevailed, and you've helped begin the liberation of Europe. When you're old and grey, sitting on the porch of your house back in Ohio, you'll be able to tell your grandchildren that you were there on D-Day, that you were part of the generation that saved the world. But for now, you're 19 years old, sitting in a French field with your rifle across your knees and your friends beside you, watching the sunset on June 6th, 1944. The longest day is finally ending, and tomorrow will bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove yourself worthy of the uniform you wear. You've made it through your first day of combat, and you're beginning to believe that you might just make it home after all.